So I see there are 5 of us here, so that would be a quorum. So I'll call the meeting to order. So, and let's see, I'll do a little roll call here. Terry Ackerman,
Present.
Stephen Crane,
Presence.
Carl Packard.
Here, EC.
I see you. Cynthia Rainey
Present.
and Elise Woodward, present. Parashar Patel is with us as well, and a few members of the public. Laurie Hunter has let me know that she will join us late. She was summoned to a superintendent meeting this afternoon. So, and I don't know about Jared or
Terry LaFleur is off today.
she's off. So we haven't seen Carrie in a while.
I know. I reminded her of that.
And
Recently.
she said, I'm off today. Okay. All right. Well, in any event, I don't think we have minutes of March 31st. So we will defer that until next time. So next time there'll be March 31st and April 14th. And Cynthia, as always, you please let me know if you need any assistance with the minutes.
And Elise, I didn't check. Did you submit the other sets of minutes independently? I don't think you ever sent them to me.
Okay, well, I thought I did, but
I'll check. And I'm having some weird issues with my mail, but
would you like me just to submit them?
oh, I don't mind doing it, but if you could just, I didn't find an email from you, but.
Okay. So those were minutes of the 3rd of March and the 17th of March.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, I'll send those to you.
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Welcome, Jared.
Hi there. Sorry I'm late. Laurie's going to
worries.
be, I think she let you know, she's just on with Commissioner Riley.
Yeah, she let me know, so that's fine. Thank you for joining us. So our agenda today includes discussion of suggestions for firming up the enhanced process and our refining our recommendations. Terry, thank you for working on this, and you and Carl and maybe Parashar, maybe others worked on this. So would you like to give us the highlights of your
Well, Carl and I talked, and then just yesterday or the day before, I got another email from Parashar, which has got a lot of similar suggestions to what Carl and I came up with. Not 100%, but a lot of similarities. Does anyone have it in front of them? We could share the screen. If not, I'll look for it.
well, I might be able to find it.
What with the stuff that was in your email the other day?
Yeah, with the
Yeah, I actually do have it right up here.
I've got it.
There you go. Now I just have to get. Oh shit.
Okay, did you see it or no? Hold on. I had it there. Let's show the screen. And is this it right there, Terry?
Yes, the part that's at the bottom, A, B, and C. So I think, well, I'm guessing that no one on the committee would have a problem with A, that one of our recommendations is going to be that once the enhanced process comes up with a long-range plan in a template, that be included in the annual Finance Committee report. Now, in the usual timeframe, that was printed, I think, in February. Is that right, Carl? In a normal town meeting?
For the FinCom report?
Yeah, for an April town meeting, was it printed in February?
Yeah, usually it closes and goes to the printer, I think, in February.
All right. So
Terry would be the expert on that.
right, we didn't want to write down February because
Yeah.
you know, we don't know what town meeting is going to be in the future. So we just put that it, you know, has to be done time and included in the Finance Committee report. So does anyone have any questions or discussion about that item? Does anyone object to us recommending that item?
I don't object. I'm kind of curious. The thought process is that the two are integrally related and should be in one place. Is that what the idea was?
To what to?
What to the capital plan in the template?
No, the capital plan and the FinCom report.
Oh, the point really, well, it's an appropriate place for it, but I think the other point was that the capital plan should be made readily available to the townspeople, and the FinCom report goes out to everybody, so.
Yeah,
So I think, from my standpoint, it is, they may be on two separate paths, Parashar, but we have consistently heard from the FinCom that it would be helpful to that committee to have a long-range capital plan. It would help the FinCom with their work. And so from that standpoint, it seems like it probably would be a reasonable and, as Carl says, an appropriate place to publish it.
It wouldn't have to be the whole thing with all the appendices and all that. I think, some sort of an abstract.
well, that's where I was going actually, right? Because there were two reasons I was asking. One is, I don't know whether the Finance Committee report, there's a certain prescription, whether it's prescribed as to what elements are in it or not. I don't know. That can always be changed. But then I was thinking a little bit about what Carl said. I mean, I would imagine a comprehensive 10-year capital plan, may run 50 to 60 slides. I don't know, depending on what we're envisioning. And so are we envisioning the whole thing in there? If the answer is yes, that's great. But if we're envisioning an abstract or some section in there, I think we still have to have a complete plan somewhere else.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Right.
On a website.
Stephen.
Yeah, the way I read this was the whole plan would go in here. So that's why I was asking these questions.
Stephen, could we have your point of view about this, please?
The whole tier 3 plan,
The tier 3 plan.
the whole tier 3 plan. Right? That's what we're talking about. When you say long-range capital plan, the charge of this committee is about tier 3 projects. We're talking about a tier 3 long-range capital plan.
Exactly.
Right,
Right, that's like 4 slides.
right. I agree. I don't think it's
Well, I'm sorry, what?
slides.
A tier 3 long-range capital plan is like 4 slides.
Worse.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and I think this is the thing where we've, I think, the think globally, act locally thing, we're applying principles that would make it for like a comprehensive, like you said, comprehensive capital plan. We're talking about tier 3s, and it's a small number of projects. It's small number of projects, big number of dollars, which is why we're trying to come up with a process that makes that as open and approachable as possible because of the size of the dollars. And so but because it's a low number of projects, a tier 3 long range plan is pretty short.
So let's just talk briefly let's describe what would be included in the tier 3 capital plan abstract. Would be possible future projects.
Yes, so we would have, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So it would basically be over the next 10 years, or over the next 10 years, we anticipate. I mean, I don't know that we'd include the middle school in it if we were doing it at this point. Maybe we would, but it would be like a middle school, and then a public safety complex, and then potentially a salt shed, depending on whether or not it's $5 million, and a renovation of this building or that building or something else, and you chart the years, and you'd have back of the envelope dollars associated with it, and some brief 2 or 3 bullets on the scope of the project, which you really wouldn't know anyway, because it's just, you haven't even done a feasibility study. You just know you need one.
Right. So we would have the name of the project over 10 years, and estimated cost, rough order of magnitude.
Yeah, and this is the template thing. Sorry, this is the template thing that we've been talking about.
Yeah,
Yes.
and a brief description of need or description of why this project is on the list.
And I think I would put it. Sorry, Carl. Let me just build on that one point, and then I will mute myself. and then a comment about site. You know, on, you know, is it gonna go on the existing site or do we need to acquire a site?
Okay.
I think there should also be some sort of a horizon in terms of years, you know, whatever, 5 to 7 years, you know, 7 to 10 years, that what we're anticipating. Of course, you know, those costs that at 10 years will be, yeah, back of the envelope. As you get to, you know, 2 years or something, they should be more.
So this list of future
Oh.
projects would be developed by the town manager
Well,
and the
that's
school
what we're gonna-
administration?
Well, we're gonna get to that in a minute. What we did was, this is sort of that, the final product in a way is A, and then how we get there is B. So,
Okay, so let's talk about how we get there then.
okay, so in order to get to this 4 pages, and I'd prefer to call it pages than slides, just because it's gonna be in a book, I guess, and on the website. So working backwards, if you go to B3, and we'll go backwards, no later than January 15th every year, the select board and school committee shall hold a joint session to discuss, amend, and endorse the plan in time for inclusion in the FinCom report. So this is what we've been talking about anyway, B3, that there's going to be an annual session of the select board and school committee. And then in order to get to that, we realized we need 1 and 2. So number 2, we think maybe a month before January 15th, the FinCom should hold a public hearing on the capital plan. And then sometime in the fall before that FinCom meeting is B1, the town manager and superintendent would hold a hearing, that should say, to present a draft 10-year capital plan with recommended sequencing and timeframes. And that presentation might be only 15 minutes long. And then the main part of this B1 is that the public is going to have a lot of time for input, questions, and deliberation.
So when you say plenty of time, what do you mean?
Well, let's say you have a public hearing or a public forum or whatever you want to call it, and however you want to do it. And it's in September or all right, it says September. You set up this meeting for 7 o'clock. The first 15 minutes or maybe even 30 minutes are the presentation. And then the public has all the way till 9 o'clock or whatever to debate, discuss, comment.
So you mean a period of time at that meeting or
Yes.
following that, as opposed to an open, like 14 days or 30 days?
That's what I meant, but that's a very good point, because they also could probably send in written comments all the way up to December 15th, which is when the FinCom meets. So that way the public could opine at the meeting in September and also send in written comments after the meeting.
All right, so I'd like to push back on your item number 2, the FinCom holding a public hearing. And why would that be the FinCom's responsibility?
Carl, you want to take that one?
Well, eventually the FinCom will be responsible for making a recommendation on these things. You know, I think the FinCom is very interested in the financial soundness of the town and on the sustainability of our tax rates and so on. And this pertains to that.
But fundamentally, wouldn't the FinCom be more likely to hold a public hearing, if in fact you mean a public hearing as opposed to a public forum or meeting or information session? Wouldn't the FinCom be more likely to hold that public hearing when there were many more details for the project, such as after a feasibility study were completed, so there were a firm cost estimate, for example?
No, I think holding a hearing on the entire capital plan a year would really be, a suitable way to do it.
Elise, this is Brasher. Can I chime in here a little bit?
Yes, please.
As Terry said, I think I had suggested something similar. And might be helpful if I just kind of lay out a little bit of what I was suggesting and walking through maybe the first year and a half cycle, if you will. And so if we follow this path, I think the town manager and superintendent would develop a plan, was what I was thinking, with guidance and occasional updates to the select board, as well as the school committees. At some point, late fall, early winter, November, December, I was envisioning a little bit less of a formal public hearing, but a presentation of the FinCom, where the FinCom can kind of weigh in terms of what's been developed. And then the town manager and the superintendent can incorporate recommendations, not incorporate recommendations, and go before the school committee and the select board and kind of present, in essence, a final draft. And what I was actually envisioning also sometime in the fall, an open public comment period where people would have 30 days, 40 days, we can pick a date to provide written comments. And when the final draft is presented to the school committee and the select board at the beginning of the year, in essence, they would kind of summarize the nature of the comments and why they did or didn't take them into account, for example. And then the select board and the school committee at a joint meeting would vote on it, make any changes, et cetera. And it's that piece, it's that version that gets incorporated into the warrant for those relevant spending proposals for that particular year. And in the very first one, you would see the whole 10-year thing. It'd be probably a bit of a heavier lift, the first version. But then you kind of repeat that cycle for the next year and the lift won't be that heavy. But I think if there are tweaks and things have changed in terms of estimates or something new comes on, I think you use the whole process again and again, give the opportunity to the public in the fall to, hey, this is, these are the revisions to this year. Here's what's changed, and give us your thoughts when you go through that cycle again.
So it's refined every year. Yeah.
And you do it every year, right? And because it doesn't become a heavy lift in particular. And the usefulness of
I
public.
want to say one thing about a hearing is that it enables the people, citizens, to speak and make statements. A meeting of the finance committee really doesn't do that, except, maybe at the end, anybody out there have any comments or anything like that. But the point of the hearing is to have the public make statements.
And that's fine.
Like a separate meeting. It can be part of a FinCom meeting. The part of its meetings, and the HTC, they all have hearings as part of their meetings.
I understand that. And again, where I was going with the written comments is I think it puts a bit of responsibility on members of the public to actually participate by writing something in. By the same token, there's a little bit of accountability for the schools and the town to go through their comments, think about them, and develop, even if it's 1 or 2 sentence reply back in terms of, a number of comments said X, a number of other comments said Y about this, and here's kind of what we did or didn't do. And it has that two-way conversation and accountability. So people at least understand their comments were read and whether, how they were accounted for or not. So I'm okay with a public hearing. But I also think the written element would be important. So that's why, Carl.
So why don't we add in between 1 and 2, we add in another thing with for the next 30 or 60 or whatever days, there's a written comment period where citizens are invited to.
Yeah, I think it's important.
You can add that to the end of number 1, yeah.
I think it's important that the comment period have a date by which it ends.
Right.
You need to give the staff time to read through them and decide whether to incorporate before they have a version to present to FinCom, for example, right? Because I think the Finance Committee would be interested in hearing what the public had to say and how people replied or didn't reply, as would, I would imagine, the school board and the school committee.
So there's plenty of time between September and December 15th. So we can start another step in there that just says, following that September meeting, there will be a 30-day or whatever comment period where citizens, comments are invited in writing.
Okay, so I'm very interested now in hearing from Cynthia, Jared, Laurie, Stephen about this, because we have only heard a bit from Stephen, but from Laurie, Jared, and Cynthia, what do you think of these, of this refinement to the process?
So my only concern is how are the comments then incorporated into the capital plan?
So here's, and again, I'm going off of what happens at the federal level in terms of notice and comment rulemaking.
Mhm.
And I'll just make up an example, right?
Sure.
So if the initial plan, say you publish the plan in September on the website and open it up for 30 days, or you present it and then publish it. And suppose that one of the project number 4 is, $7 million for, repaving all of Concord streets, making that up. And we're going to spend $7.5 million in 1 year to do it.
Okay.
If some
Feedback.
comment could say, hey, we think imposing a $7.5 million spend, doing it all at once doesn't make sense. We recommend phasing it out over 3 years. We don't want the streets to be crumbled, et cetera. The response could be, we received a number of comments on the topic. While there were some that favored a 1 year effort, the vast majority favored breaking it out into 3-5 years. Looking back at this issue, we have considered these comments and believe a 3-year phase-in is appropriate. And then the plan that gets presented to the FinCom wouldn't be that 1 year. It would actually be the 3 years. And the FinCom would understand that it went from 1 year to 3 years because of the comments received by the public. And the public would understand what change happened. Does that help, Cynthia?
So for number 2, you're saying that the modified or annotated or something capital plan will be ready at that juncture.
That is correct. And
Okay.
and what happens in the federal government rulemaking, there's a preamble to the actual legal text.
Mhm.
So,
No, yep, I'm following
They
you.
talk about the issues a little bit in narrative, plain English. They
Yep.
talk about what the commenter said in the response.
Mhm.
And you can almost envision that before the technical slides or whatever.
Right.
And I think it would make sense to do it before FinCom, so FinCom can kind of see what the public has said and offer their opinion as well.
And I expect it'll take a couple of years to smooth out the process. And I would expect the first year there would be a lot of what about me? In other words, what I think is a need and needs something that needs to be addressed in a capital plan isn't even on your list.
That's right.
Yeah,
But
okay.
it's good to get it out there, right?
Yeah, no. I just wanted to sort of go through the process and
Yeah, absolutely.
because
It could be on the list. It's just going to say beyond year 10. We don't know yet.
no. So that's not what I'm saying, Terry. I'm saying because we now know of a big opportunity. So we know that NMI Star Met's coming online relatively soon. Many opportunities there. I don't see anything on there about municipal facility there. I mean, there might be. I'm just throwing that out there. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But the idea is to put everything we know on the list. If it's not going to come up in years 1 through 10, then it'll just say beyond year 10.
No, but.
So,
Tara,
but I think the point,
Cynthia is suggesting that there may be ideas coming from the public
exactly.
that other people haven't even thought about, and that
Okay,
would come up in the public comment. And the answer is
Great.
yes.
great.
Exactly.
I mean, I think that's sort of the reason that we're having this whole,
Yeah.
you know, and, people could say, we just didn't think about it. We thought about it and we didn't think it would be within the 10-year. I mean, whatever, right?
Right.
There's no bad idea.
Okay, yeah, good. Thank you. Laurie, Jared, Stephen, what do you think?
So I have just maybe they're rhetorical questions, I'm not sure. Just in terms of timing, I don't know if it matters whether this syncs up with the warrant timing and pieces like that, because it doesn't. So we would miss any, again, I don't know if it matters if it's so far out that you're not trying to reflect any information in the warrant deadline and just in usually first week in January. So that's one piece of reaction I have. And I'm still kind of debating the nuance and the difference between numbers 2 and 3. I see the committees are different, but anyway, I'm just kind of in my
One
head
is a
throwing
hearing
that
and one is-
around.
In the version I was thinking of, Lori, they would align with the warrant schedule.
Okay,
No, the point is that it doesn't align. The only thing that aligns with the
Oh.
warrant schedule is the FinCom report, which is,
No, I think Lori was talking about the substance of what's in the capital plan.
mhm,
And I think, Lori, parts of the capital plan for the next year, whatever may be funded, has to align with the warrant articles. So what I was envisioning is the whole plan is done at the time of the warrant article, so it all aligns that way.
okay.
So would that be changing December 15th to December 1st and changing January 15th to January 1st? Does
So
that-
let's not get down into the weeds about these dates for the
Yeah.
moment. Let's stay
Yeah.
conceptually with our idea here. So, and I think relative to Laurie's comment about syncing with the warrant, I think we should consider whether this needs to sync with the warrant, because the elements of a 10-year capital plan for tier 3 projects, in fact, generate a warrant article in the next
right.
town meeting, or whether would that be 1 year out?
Well, I would think by the time they're going to be on the warrant for the town meeting, they would have gotten to the head of the line in the year preceding.
I think if I may,
Yes.
I think that there's benefit to tying the process in with the town meeting process, because it's a time where people are focused on budgets and capital and things like that. And so even if we don't have a particular warrant article, I think even if the warrant's already closed and we're in the public hearing phase, presenting the long range capital plan just as an informational item, during the public hearing with the blessing of the select board and the moderator, just because we have people's attention. By the time one of these long range tier 3 projects turns into a warrant article, the public should have already seen it at least once at one of these hearings. And so then that timeline would be independent and related to that project. In terms of the comment period, I actually, having worked for the federal government, I chuckled at Parastar's wanting to use the federal rulemaking process, because then that means I don't really have to do anything on this for I can't wait till 2025 when I actually have to show something for the tier 3 projects, if we're going to go on the federal model and timeline. Parashar, let me ask you a question. Did you get emails about the middle school from residents?
We did from the public?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that in the context of a finance committee vote?
What do you mean in the context? I mean, we got a blizzard of them.
Right, you get a blizzard of emails, comments from residents. It wasn't on the agenda for a finance committee vote. There was no public hearing.
Right.
And this is the reality of public comment. It does, and this is why having a hearing is really an artifice, because whether it's a public hearing or a public meeting, you're going to get feedback from citizens if they are, especially on a tier 3. And like the other thing with the federal rulemaking process that I don't think we're going to do is, hey, thanks for sending your email. You're past the comment window, so we're not going to listen to you. Like, that's not an option here either. So I think so we can structure the comment process. I just think that is gonna fall apart within minutes of us starting this process out, because the public are gonna comment and find us, as they should. And I think the middle school is a good example of people who are engaged in letting us know. And then the middle school building committee has said, geez, we thought we had it right. Let's go to the finance committee and select board and school committee and get their feedback, because we've gotten all this community input that we didn't have before. And that's what we're talking about. That's how not everything that's happening to the middle school is an example or a corollary for what we're trying to do, but there are parts that are, and that part of it is definitely one. And so that's where I don't think you need to build in a comment period. Every time we talk about it, it's a comment period.
So Stephen, I totally agree with you. However, I think that in the spirit of trying to describe a process for the community to understand, I think it's valid to say, we're going to have these meetings and there's a public comment period. We expect public comment following the meeting for 14 days or whatever. And I don't think it is that we have to be literal about it being analogous to the federal process, because in fact, we do have an open door policy about public comment, and those comments roll in all the time. And if the select board, school committee, or FinCom, town manager, superintendent received comments that were not acknowledged, those citizens would remake those comments. You know, they'd say, well, what about the issues I raised before? So I just think it is reasonable to acknowledge that we expect public comment after each of these meetings. And that in fact, as Cynthia pointed out, we might get ideas from the public about large projects that should be on the 10-year plan.
Is it as simple as saying public comments will be accepted throughout the duration of the, plan development or something like that?
So I would prefer to have it to say something like there will be an open period for public comment following the meeting for 30 days or 14 days, or make up some number, 10 hours, whatever it is, and not to be explicit about it being an open door. But obviously public comment can be generated at any time.
People know they can make.
Yeah.
That sounds good. And when we're finished with this part, Lori had another question too that I want to address if you're ready to move on. Lori, your question was, well, why do we need both B2 and B3? Why do we need a public hearing at FinCom and then a joint session of the select board and school committee? And Carl and I went round and round about this for a while. And Carl, you might want to talk about the part that I haven't really gone into detail about how you want that number 2 to focus on those items like sustainability, maintenance, and smoothing the debt curve.
Yeah, well, I think that the hearing that number 2, yeah, should be bringing things like that in, should be looking at a very far horizon, as well as things that were on last year's list. I also think there that it is still kind of the plan is still being baked or whatever. But the third one is really when it should be whatever, finalized or, for that year's.
And I was also thinking 2 separate meetings, Lori, and for me,
Okay.
I think what Carl says is I agree with, but I also think for sure logistics, you got 15 members of the FinCom. I don't know how many members on the school committee, members of the select board. And, I think having 2 separate meetings is just less wieldy, frankly. And then at the end of the day, the organizations that actually have over responsibility are the select board and for the school committee. I mean, FinCom's only recommendation body.
Yep. And the only other comment I have, thank you, that's helpful, is that before we even get to this process, Jared and I are going to have multiple conversations with the school committee. So it's just worth noting that there's a lot of public access there too.
Completely agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if this process goes well, B3 might take 5 minutes. Because
Mhm.
now we've had so many meetings, so much public comment.
Yes,
We know what we're doing.
this might be an
it's-
endorsement.
Yeah, that's what,
Right.
that means the process went well if that happens.
Okay, thank you.
So that's helpful. Jared, do you have anything you'd like to add? Question?
No,
Comment
I think
on?
it made sense. I apologize. I missed the first couple minutes of this. I was just dealing with a situation, but no, I think my question was regarding the 5-year versus the 10-year, but that's a different topic, I think. Plan.
Well, and so what, do you want to say more about that?
Just in my experience, 10-year plans don't really hold up. And we have newer buildings. I think a 5-year plan is just more realistic. I did do, just for the record, I did do a big 10-year plan with the community that took me all year to do. And the second I left, they changed it.
Yeah.
I think a 5-year is more realistic because if I'm thinking of something 8 years out, I don't think it's going to hold. Obviously, roofs, stuff like that, absolutely get that on the radar. But in our case, when we're still a number of years away from roof projects, if we get into middle school, those are the big things that I think of. Everything else can be really substituted in, year out.
So it's likely that roof projects and renovations such as that would not make it to the tier 3 capital plan. That
Right.
they would likely be in a tier 1 or tier 2
Correct.
capital plan,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So we're really only talking about the tier 3 projects. And I think your comment about a 5-year plan is very defensible. I
Mm.
think we all would agree that that is much more predictable than a 10-year plan. And a 10-year plan will inevitably change. But
Yeah.
I think we think about this 10-year capital plan as kind of not a static process, but a kinetic process, so that we're putting, projects are being identified. They rise to the tier 3 capital plan list. They've got a rough order of magnitude cost and a description of the need, maybe a point of view about site or site acquisition, or what year it might appear on the horizon. And then when those projects are put into the template, that is the document that we would begin to see our ability to flatten the debt curve over 10 years. And by moving those projects around on the template, we might have a better idea of the sequence of the projects in order to maintain the debt curve that we think is
I think
reasonable.
that's one of the reasons
Can
why
I just interrupt?
more than
'Cause I just-
5 years to
Can I just interrupt? Because I want to be very clear. We will still have our 5-year capital plan with tier 1, tier 2 projects.
Hmm.
We will not, these are completely separate.
Good,
right?
that's clear, yes.
Okay, so I just wanted, we're not asking for a 10-year capital plan incorporating everything. This is just tier 3.
Right.
And it is a part of our charge.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like it or not, we're supposed to deliver one.
Right. So I think we should
somebody was
change,
thinking.
I think we're all in agreement that 5-year plan is going to be much more accurate, but the charge is 10 years.
Mhm.
So I think A should now read the recommended tier 3 10-year
Yes,
capital plan.
thank you.
Yes.
Okay. So in the spirit of syncing this process with the warrant schedule, do we want to try to do that? Do we want to do it by months? Do we want to do it by a number of days in advance of the warrant? If we've got we don't know when the warrants are going to be issued.
So I think to that, I want to repeat myself redundantly and say that I think that presenting the plan annually during town meeting process is something that I think is, or like as a part of the town manager's budget or the annual cap, like presenting it as part of the annual capital plan and then the 10-year tier 3 plan, those should all go together because they just make sense.
Mm.
In terms of tailoring like any warrant articles that would generate from the plan, I think we should stay out of that because there's no way to predict that and it's going to be unique and you may end up having a special town meeting that's called for a tier 3 project. So I just think it's the annual presentation of the 10-year plan should be tied to the presentation of the regular capital plan is my recommendation.
Okay.
I'm just going to say that we are suggesting, in a sense, dates that do tie somewhat with the town meeting schedule. But I think what we were trying to do is to take some of the things a little bit off the schedule, because, for example, as you get closer to the town meeting, you've got all the hearings, everybody's doing hearings, and we kind of didn't want to conflict with that. And again, since we're not really doing articles for that individual town meeting, I think there can be some flexibility as to whether you write on the town meeting, like the warrant closing or something like that. We tried to actually kind of miss that date. Yeah.
I think there is benefit to what Stephen said, and that's what I was envisioning, is having everything aligned. I mean, the heavy lift will be the first year, frankly, and then future ones will be revisions. And as a project or two come up where in that particular town meeting, there's going to be a warrant article, it'll happen through the normal course of the process. But it just seems a little odd that you'd have a tier 3 capital plan where elements of it are completed or it's completed after the town meeting. Carl, I guess the incremental ask of reviewing that plan during that time just doesn't seem to be a heavy lift.
Okay, well, there's a lot going on running up the town meeting. Again, we were just trying to make it a little bit less pressured. And again, I think these dates, to a certain extent, do align with town meeting schedules.
Yeah, I think they do too. I agree with Stephen and Parashar on this, and I think we can tweak the dates to make them work out. That's why I was saying before, do we just change the 15th to the 1st? Would that do it? And maybe somebody has to work with the town clerk and actually take a whole big look at it. But I think these dates are pretty close.
Can I ask Terry a question? And Stephen, you guys know this. I mean, are there already dates set in the process for when town meetings have to occur, et cetera? And if there are, maybe we just have a preamble up front and said, hey, we're envisioning a process that aligns with the delivery of the FinCom report every year. And that way the dates, if they change from year to year, et cetera, that's done. Or if the dates are already baked in somewhere else, just pick up those dates.
That's the problem. The problem is that we had town meeting in April every year.
Right.
But now, last year it was in September, this year it's in June, and we don't know after COVID what it's going to be. And so we don't have any baked in.
Well, I agree, Terry, but that's where if you say that the plan shall be submitted annually by the town manager with the annual capital plan and town manager budget,
Okay.
then it doesn't, then that all gets keyed off of the budget schedule for each year, and then people know 6 months ahead of time when it's coming out.
So the thing you just said, is that B3? Is that the final endorsement that happens? Or are you talking about B1, the first recommendation?
B3.
Okay, so what month of the year, Stephen, do you present your capital plan usually?
Well, like you said, it varies, but generally, like this year we presented it in March, really, or the public hearing is, a week from today, maybe. And so it depends. We present it to the select board, and the school committee, the superintendent presents their capital to the school committee as we go through, but it gets presented to the finance, and then it gets presented to the finance committee as a part of the guidelines discussion, and then it gets presented to, to the residents through the public hearings. And so really, it's supposed to be done in advance of a submission to the board, to select board and school committee. And that's where I think it really is. It's either part one or part two.
Can I make a suggestion maybe? Because I think if the dates are going to move around, if, as Elise said earlier, conceptually, we agree that there are certain touch points that have to occur, and we've got to allow people time to develop the plan, consider the input, have the meetings. Maybe we just say conceptually, here's the plan, or here are the elements. And then we would ask that the town manager and the school superintendent get together, and I'm going to put out a date, July, develop a schedule that they're going to use for the capital improvement, tier 3 plan development process. And so that way you guys have some flexibility to say, hey, this year it's going to be September 15th, next year it might be September 30th for B1, et cetera. But as long as you're incorporating these elements, do we have to get bogged down into date selection now?
No, and that's where I think if you just tie it to the town manager's budget and capital plan,
Yep.
then that date is fixed every year because it's a certain number of days off from closing the warrant. You've got a bunch of meetings where that stuff gets presented, and then you have a public hearing or more. You have public hearings built in as a part of the town meeting process. And even if there's not a warrant article associated with that particular year's tier 3 long range plan, you can still present it as a part of the public hearing and get public comment on that.
Okay, so the only part I don't understand about that is, so if B1 happened in March, then I'm not sure we would get to B3 in time to be able to.
Terry,
No,
I think what if we say in number 1, it's in September, just as you say it. In number 2, we say before December 15th, right? So because after December 15th, nobody can focus on this. So it needs to happen before December 15th. And then number 3 is this, the plan will be presented annually, submitted annually with the town manager's capital plan on the budget schedule, or, whatever, and at the public hearing. So it's the final plan that would be rolled out with the town manager's budget.
I like that timing, but the only thing left out was that the select board and school committee didn't have a brief joint session to endorse.
We would, yeah, I mean, we just have to build that
We're
in.
missing the thing with the FinCom report, the publication of the plan.
Right. Well, don't we have that with the, okay. Well,
No.
that's item A. So, all right. So
Yeah.
we have the initial meeting in September, town manager and superintendent hold a joint meeting.
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry, Elise. The town manager's budget and capital plan are referenced anyway in the FinCom report now, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, then why would this not be included with that if we're presenting
this is
it?
the long-range capital plan.
That's what I'm saying. It gets presented as a part of all of that, and so it is lumped together, and then it goes into the finance committee report under that same chapter. And then in
The other
terms of
thing with the town manager's capital plan is it includes all the things that are not part of the long-range planning.
So I think what we'd like to be sure is that the long-range capital plan for tier 3 projects, 10 years for tier 3 projects, is highlighted so that it's absolutely crystal clear. People can see it, shine a light on it,
Right.
and it should, as it is published in the finance committee report, along with the town manager's budget, capital plan, et cetera, and schools.
I'm not sure that,
Um,
my recollection is the town manager's capital plan gets published with the town manager's budget. And it's not in the finance committee report.
But
Right,
the fu-
and it has tier 1 and 2, but it doesn't have tier 3.
Right.
But it would in this circumstance,
Good. In the
just like a joint committee meeting of the schools and town and the select board does not exist. But it would under our recommendation, and we would just have to find a place. And I think we have it in number 3 there slotted fine.
Yeah. So we need to then have the joint meeting as part of the process in advance of the final capital, long-range tier 3 capital plan being presented with the town manager's capital plan.
Mhm.
So on B2, when we say no later than December 15th, or at a date, if later at a date selected by the FinCom or something, because if things get pushed back like they did this year,
Yeah,
we're going to be in a sticky wicket. So again, this is why I think just having the broad statement and then giving a little bit of leeway, if we're going to put down a month or whatever for these 3 touchstones, I think would be helpful. As long as I think we're all aligned, Stephen, to your point, just should go with the regular process.
Yeah, so I guess what I'll do is our Zoom master today is also our warrant master. And so I think what I would do is if you give us a chance, we will just say X number of days before town meeting, X number of days before town meeting. And because I think it's clear, it's clear what you're trying to accomplish here on a normal town meeting schedule. And so Chris and I will go back and look at what those timelines really are and just convert, because that's what we mean, and we'll just do that.
Perfect.
Great.
yeah,
That
not
would be-
on December 25th. That's what we.
Yeah. Thank you, that would be helpful.
Yes. And when I say we, Chris knows what that means.
Yeah, the royal we, right?
And then the last part of this is C. We have to figure out if there's an APP or some other way that our recommendations from the capital planning task force can be endorsed by the select board and then not just forgotten about, but put down into, codified somewhere.
Well,
Isn't the creation of this process?
Yeah,
the recommendation is the recommendation. If the select board accepts it, then the select board can decide whether or not they want to write an APP on it or whether or not they'll take it as a recommendation and act on it.
But what's
yeah,
an
maybe we can
APP?
get some flexibility there with an APP or a policy statement or something like that.
What's an APP to a newbie like me?
Say it again, Parashar?
What is an APP? What does that stand for?
Administrative policy or procedure and procedure.
Ah, thank you.
And there, what, 80 or 100 of them? And
Give or take.
about every 5 to 10 years, the select board considers whether they will revise them, update them, et cetera. So,
Well, I think all we have to do is recommend that the select board find some way to codify, if they endorse our recommendations, or maybe or whatever, that somehow it's codified, either in.
Yep.
or some
Such
other-
as an APP.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cynthia, do you have ideas about that? More specific ideas about that?
I think it's good. I guess we should be clear just as far as that the school committee's not bound by any APPs, so, but I'm sure,
So the school committee is a free agent?
will we have policy?
We
Yeah.
have policies that, yeah, probably more of those than your APPs.
It
Just a
could be.
couple. So, I mean, what we usually do if we do something that's joint is share ours as a policy, or at least something similar. Just so the school committee is aware, and we put our foot down and said, yeah, we're going to abide by this process.
Well, I think it's helpful in the so-called corporate memory as
Yep.
Individuals change on all of these boards and committees. I think it's helpful to have the policy recorded somewhere.
Yes, I agree. Like we have the electric, the electric fleet policy, and there's numbers of those that,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
So,
you want to stop sharing?
yeah, that's good. Thank you. So I'd like to ask a rhetorical question. Does anybody have a point of view about what Carrie LaFleur will think about this process?
I think she'll, I guess if she was honest, she'd say she doesn't love the idea of making the finance committee report any more complicated, because that is an all-consuming task for her many years.
Mhm.
But I think she would probably prefer consolidating it with the other processes that we're doing, because there are natural synergies and efficiencies to doing it that way.
Mhm. Well, it seems to me that this is very good progress on clarifying our enhanced process.
Yeah.
So Terry and Carl and Parashar, I thank you very much for spearheading this. Are there other clarifications or enhancements that we should bring up?
Can I just make a brief comment? I've been kind of on the fence between a standing committee and the enhanced process, back and forth. And my main problem with the enhanced process was it didn't have enough specifics or enough teeth in it.
Mhm.
So I do feel comfortable if this group were to endorse either those things or like it. I think that it would have enough teeth that I would feel comfortable voting.
With these recommendations, yeah.
Carl, would that be true for you as well? Because I know
Yes.
you've been advocating a standing committee.
I have, this is a standing process that brings the public in a proactive way that I think answers the problems that I have.
And Cynthia, would you support this enhanced process with these clarifications?
yes, yep,
And Laurie,
Yes, thank you.
Jared,
Yes.
and Stephen,
Yes.
as would I. So
Would the chair then entertain a motion to adopt the enhanced process as presented and discussed?
Before we change our minds again.
But no, okay, we had some other things that were in the enhanced, we don't really have all in one place, do we? Well, I guess, okay, here it is, okay, all right, there, yeah.
So the only thing, before a motion is made, the one thing that you did have in your list was, sustainability, debt service, things like that. I made a list of notes of what would be in that template for those presentations. Name a project, planned year, estimated cost range, and it would be a range. Site acquisition, yes, no. And then a criteria evaluation scoring, which I think would cover a lot of those things. Like we have our criteria, we would just kind of run through and say, how does this score up against the criteria? And then the debt service schedule, which I think we've already adopted as something that should just be a normal part of our reporting. And I'll send those to Elise to make sure that gets kind of folded in. But that would be the information presented that was touched on in the email that I think is good to specify that now.
thank you.
Question about that.
But also include the impact on the average tax bill. I think we talked about that element.
Right.
Yep. So a debt schedule and taxpayer impact. Yep.
Thank
So
you.
the taxpayer impact is a little confusing. Would you put it for a year or, you know, what would you?
I mean, the problem is the debt service is easy because you have a cost range and you have a amortization. The taxpayer impact is, it depends on what year, it depends on what assessments are happening. I mean, it's a little more variable, and I wouldn't want people to look at that in 2022 and say, for a project that isn't gonna basically be bonded until 2025, and be like, geez, you said it was only gonna be, you know, $800 a year, and now I've got my bill and it's $950. I mean, I would worry about that a little bit, but I think if we qualified it enough, we should have the
Okay.
average taxpayer impact on it.
Okay, if we can qualify it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But my question was, I don't think we should take the average of all the years. I think we have to put it down for the peak year.
And that's another one that it depends on how you're borrowing. Because the model we use at the one we developed for the middle school that's being distributed right now is a level principal.
Right, but the interest is highest in the first year, right?
Well, maybe not level principal, I meant level payment.
Oh,
I mean, Terry, I think again, this is complex, as Stephen said. I mean, as long as we adopt, and Terry or Stephen, Carrie adopt a consistent set of assumptions for all of them,
Mhm.
and you make it very clear, that's what we gotta go with. Otherwise, you get into the minutiae and
Yeah,
you can't ever have a.
right.
yeah, and I'll be honest, projecting it on the highest year is a scare tactic.
Well, I know that's.
It's not an honest assessment of the overall, of the amortized impact.
That's right, that's right. It's just I've seen 3 different estimates for, let's say, a project that costs $100 million. You know, so we need to get some consistency. That's.
I think at a later date, as the
Okay.
template starts to take shape, we can have a discussion about what assumptions
Okay.
should go into that. But yeah,
Okay.
I just think Carrie's approach is level payment. So you don't, because you neither scare people on the peak year
Okay,
nor lull them into a false sense of a bargain in the out years.
okay, well, it's a lot simpler to understand too. Great.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the old way was trying to pay a lot rapidly in the beginning,
Right,
and that's why we got the Matterhorn there.
Yeah, it's just for illustrative purposes only.
okay.
Can I just say something that I think is actually pertinent to the conversation? It's
Sure.
actually good news. And I just sent that to the school committee in the towns. So we've been working with our bond advisor regarding the outstanding high school debt. And we're looking at potentially being able to refinance the remaining monies at the high school. Right now, it has a true interest cost of about 3%. We think we can get that down to about 1.4. And that savings we will see could be about $3.4 million over the course of the next 18 years. So that's great news. I just thought I should share that with you all.
Good move.
That's great news.
Which
Thank you,
goes
Jeff.
to what you were just talking about. The numbers you put out are as good as you know them at the time. So,
Right.
Right, which I think is why, it will be useful to review this on an annual basis
Yeah,
because things
yeah.
are changing all the time,
Yeah.
as well as
I
our
don't think borrowing money
priorities.
is gonna get much cheaper than.
yeah, it's not gonna get better than that. Cynthia. But
No.
But Jared, that's great. So Stephen made a motion to add these elements to the enhanced process as we discussed today.
I don't know if I moved that. I just said that
Oh, I don't know.
that we would codify that, but then I would move to adopt the enhanced process as discussed.
But the added elements had to do with some of the things that would be brought into the consideration.
Yeah, we'll call it the template items, because they would be a part of that
Okay, and now
template.
we've codified that. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So moved.
so I'm going to go out on a limb and say we have a motion to adopt the enhanced process with the refinements that we've discussed today. And that we will come back at our next meeting with these written out so that everybody can review them, you know, in black and white. And is there a second for that?
Second. Wonderful.
Terry, thank you. Any discussion?
Let me
Yes.
just-
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Cynthia. Sorry.
So I'm just trying to get this clear. We're going to vote to proceed with this today, but then we're going to see it in writing at our next meeting.
We're going to vote to proceed with it today.
Okay.
Because we have had a lot of conversation and made a lot of notes about this. And I think it will be appropriate to write it out and to look at it again together and decide if in fact we got it right or if we will want to make additional refinements.
So
Okay, so-
therefore, isn't it a good idea to put that vote off?
Well, I would say we
Table
could take a
motion.
vote to adopt this with the refinements that we have discussed today. And that with the intention of confirming that vote at a future meeting.
Okay, I like it.
What you said.
Too risky, Carl? Is that okay?
No, I think what you said there.
Okay. So is there,
Confirming
Terry
it, yeah.
seconded, yeah. So all in favor?
Let's do
Okay.
roll call.
Yeah, roll
Okay, we'll do a
call.
roll call. All right, here's our roll call. Terry Ackerman,
Aye.
Cynthia Rainey,
Yes.
Stephen Crane,
Yes.
Laurie Hunter,
Yes.
Carl Packard,
Yes.
Jared Stanton,
Yes.
everybody, Elise, yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, okay. Thank you. That's a unanimous vote.
Well done.
That's exciting because I feel like we've been stuck here for months. It's right.
Well, Terry, I don't really feel we've been stuck, but I think that I was reluctant to take a vote
Right.
until I was reasonably confident that we had consensus. And
I agree.
because we
Yeah,
have had
good idea.
a number of committee members sort of in and out of meetings for all good reasons. So I wanted to have mostly everybody present. And I'm sorry that Carrie wasn't here today because I think in fact, you know, it's sort of like the person not in the room is going to have the work associated with what we just voted. So
Isn't that the way it usually works? That
yes,
you miss the meeting?
Yeah.
you're
I'm-
right.
I'm comfortable with that outcome.
Okay, that's good. So,
Can I make one comment about that, Elise? Just kind of
Yes.
editorial?
Yeah.
And because the one thing I think, you know, we've gotten a lot of feedback from committees and others who really who had thought the idea of a freestanding committee was better. And I think hopefully they will see the amount of time and consideration that we put into the decision we just made and really see the benefits of the enhanced process and see all of the built-in committee meetings, even if it's not a new committee, you still have a whole bunch of existing committee meetings that are check-in points for this process. And those are the meetings that people generally go to or pay attention to. School committee, select board, finance committee, public hearings. I mean, those are all now baked into this enhanced process and we didn't have to create a new structure. And I think I personally think that that's a win for transparency and for planning. And I just hope that people who felt the other way, felt that we needed a freestanding committee, understand that this really is an enhancement. So that's my 2 cents.
thank you. And I, I concur with those comments. I think that this gives us the opportunity to really show that our existing process enhanced with more specificity will give the results that the community is interested in. And a standing committee can always be formed, in the future if this is not working. So I think it does give the best chance to really,
I think it's definitely an improvement.
super.
I think if we hadn't gotten this much of an improvement, I think it would have been a shame.
Right. So I didn't mean to imply anything about your leadership, Elise, or anything. I think that as a group, it took us a long time to get this consensus. And it was time well spent, and I'm really pleased with what we've come out with.
So you can't hurt my feelings about this, Terry, at all. I mean,
You
I
should
think-
feel good. I think you should.
I
You've
think
done a good
that
job.
I think it's been a very valuable
Yes.
iterative process, I think, to
Yes.
get to this. And I appreciate everyone's opinions. I really feel that because we started out with the committee with difference of opinion about this, it allowed us to really answer the difficult questions and to move toward the center on it. So that's always useful, I think. Okay. So I'm going to take public comment for a few minutes, and then we'll, if we have time, we'll come back to thinking about designing our report. So is there any members of the public who'd like to comment? All right, seeing none. We have to, in addition to firming up our language on this enhanced process, we're going to need to create a report for the select board. And I'm interested to, we circulated a potential table of contents once upon a time. I'm interested in knowing which components of this story are members of this committee interested in telling, i.e. what will you commit to writing in the report?
Well, I kind of committed to doing something. It appeared to me was about the issues that brought this committee about. So I think that's what I had committed to do.
So the background story of
Yeah.
why this committee?
The pressing issues, yeah.
Okay. I think
I
that's
think I
excellent.
committed to something, but I don't remember what it was.
The
So Lisa,
pressing-
do you want to make some assignments or throw some things out that you would like to? Or-
Go back to my table of contents.
While you're looking for that, I think I committed to
Comments?
putting together all the public comments.
Yep,
Mhm.
I remember that.
I got partway done on that, but I would also like to commit to summarizing the discussion that we just had. And because I think this was the biggest decision that I think that it took us a really long time to get here. And I was the one who was oscillating the most. So I think write a draft of why this recommendation is about the enhanced process is going to be like the best of both worlds. And then, of course, you guys can all tweak it how you want.
That would be great.
Someone else wants to write it, that's fine with me too.
Luce, do you have a copy of the table of contents? I'm kind of looking for it because I'm happy to.
I do. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, and this is not, Terry had added some adjustments at one time, and I'm sorry, this is not the image I pulled up, but okay, so Carl said he would do the capital planning background, the pressing issues. And Terry said she would do the description of the enhanced process.
And also 2C, I guess, what we heard from the public.
Oh, yeah, thank you. 2C.
So is Roman numeral 5 in essence our recommendations?
Yes, I think it is. Yes.
Maybe fleshing out a little bit more about the template. And
Yeah, I don't think this table of contents is really very salient now.
probably.
But fundamentally, we need an executive summary that that we can write after we have our report, I think. We have the capital planning task force, the approach what we heard from the public. Terry, I can help you with elements with maybe A and B of that.
Well, wait a second. So are you saying I'm doing all of Roman numeral 2, or am I just doing 2C?
You said 2C. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I think I added in my tweak that we need to include the charge.
We do need to include the charge, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I
That's
think-
easy, just paste it in.
Yeah, I think that's 2A, really.
Yeah. I think,
So, notwithstanding the fact that we just kidded about volunteering Kerry for something, I do think that Kerry and I, with an assist from Jared, will do, I know the table of contents is going to change, but Roman numeral 5 and parts of 4 do include like a description of financing and things like that. Obviously, we will work on that. I mean, I have my template items that I may work on a draft template. I know the word template's been used a couple of different ways in this setting. Kerry already has a template for debt schedules and things like that. That is pretty easy. And then we'll have a template for project description. And so we'll work on that on this end.
Okay.
And I'll make a note so I don't forget.
It seems like you got the summary, the task force, sort of the background, the planning, and then I heard Stephen say we'll work on the current planning, funding strategy, and then maybe how and why our recommendations kind of, the two are linked, right? Is that what your thought is, Stephen?
Yeah.
And then we close it out, is that right? I mean, is there anything more?
No, that's, but the appendices, the task force approach is going to include, our research into best practice. This is like, feels like ancient history because it's before the pandemic pause that we looked at best practices and what other cities and towns were doing, that sort of thing. So I think I can probably pull that up from our past work. So Cynthia.
right. Another
remember.
appendix is all the public comments. Because I'm going to summarize them in the report, and then we can put all appendix. if you
And
want.
then we'll show it in the appendix, yeah.
I think another thing that's missing, we need a complete list of recommendations, like, the definition of large projects, some of those other things that we do a while ago.
Yeah, that will be in B.
B?
Yeah, the recommendations in B will be I see that as being a response to each of the elements in the charge.
Okay, I'm not understanding. B of which?
No,
Roman-
1B,
1B.
sorry, 1B.
Okay.
Oh, it's the
Recommendations.
recommendations are going to be in the executive summary, but they're not going to be in described in any more detail in the body of the report.
Oh, well, they will be in the body of the report, so.
That's where I think Stephen was saying section 5 in essence would incorporate the recommendations.
Right.
Right? In other words,
Yep.
here's the process. 4 would almost be a setup to, here's the current process, and then 5 is based on the pros and cons, we decided to go with an enhanced approach, and here's the approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd want to see that part of the executive summary first because it'd make it a lot easier to write that and fold it in.
Mhm.
So I don't write it one way, or I say it doesn't get written one way. That doesn't lend itself well to an executive summary. It's easier to stretch out than to compress, I guess is how I'd say that differently.
So-
Well, won't we essentially see it next week? Pretty much?
Yeah, I think we will. Yeah.
Okay.
Lisa, I mean, I'm happy if you were gonna do it, that's great, but if you want me to take all of our past definitions and changes and tweaks and today's and turn it into the recommendations, I'm happy to do it unless you were gonna do that.
I'm happy to have you work on that, Parashar. Thank you.
Okay.
So Cynthia,
Yeah,
we would want to, I think we'd want to include well, the question is, do we want to include our minutes in the appendix?
sure. Or we can,
I don't know if it's,
we could certainly in a posted version, have a URL to the, to our minutes, you know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, I think this will get posted to a capital planning task force page. I think we already have one,
Okay.
but if we don't, it'll get posted to a page and we put the minutes on with that page, sure.
Okay, all right.
Or a URL just to go directly to the, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That makes sense.
Well, then in that case, I don't need to extract the public comments out of each set of minutes, which I was gonna do, because I'll
Wait,
get
You've
that.
done that.
Well, I did it up through maybe December or so.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
maybe I won't do it at all now because we've already gonna have.
No, I think we should do it. I think we should
Okay.
we
Okay.
should focus on it. And you've done most of that work, so
Okay,
I think that we should showcase it, yeah.
So I'm afraid I have to hop off and get ready for a 4:30 meeting, but I'm afraid to because I think someone might volunteer to have me write the whole report.
Yeah.
We
Let
will
us know what
volunteer.
we need to do. We're happy to help.
So I
Yes.
think if you and Jared can collaborate with Stephen and Carrie on
Yeah.
on the financial piece and the kind of the meshing of the school's interest and the town's interest, that would be really helpful.
Sure, we're happy to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for joining us today.
It's good to
And at
see you.
least I just thought that, do we want to take a stab at a recommended APP, just a recommendation that sort of
That's a great
Summarize this out.
idea. That's a great idea. Like that.
Are you suggesting we write the APP in the school policy statement?
so I think we could recommend
I
as
thought
part of our,
we did when we went through the Terry's list and we said, yeah, that's something that we would recommend happen.
right, I think we really need to highlight the APP and policy part of this, or it's gonna get lost.
No,
So
I agree. In the recommendations, I thought that's something we adopted, so I'll
I
make
think
sure.
it should, yeah, I mean, it should say we highly recommend requests that. this
So I
be
think what we
modified.
said is that we're going to recommend that this enhanced process be codified
Mhm,
and would leave it to the select board to determine how to do that,
Sure,
whether through an APP or some other, in some other way.
But I like Cynthia's idea that we could put, for example, and then we can put in what Cynthia's draft, if you want to volunteer to do it. I don't know.
I mean, aren't the recommendations the essence of any
Yeah,
policy
yeah,
statement?
yes, that's why I was trying to say that.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of a roles and responsibilities thing, I feel like this it's not a part of this committee's charge, and I feel like, I don't know, I don't know about the school committee, Cynthia, but it's, the board, and it's the board and town manager's job to draft those APPs, and I feel like, I don't know, I just, maybe, and it's not like, because I think you're right, we are writing the APP with the development report recommendations. I think that it's just gonna be cut and paste. I just think from a protocol standpoint, it wasn't really a part of the charge, and they didn't ask us to do it, I guess is what I would say.
No, but we can, let's say that a citizen sent us a draft policy that they would like to see changed, we would certainly accept that. And then our policy committee would meet and look at that policy. There's nothing wrong with somebody submitting a policy to
No.
us.
For sure.
So, and also it just should be APP and school committee policy.
Okay, so Cynthia, would you like to work on that?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it.
Right.
Okay,
Can I ask, Parashar, thank you for writing up all the details of what you thought you heard today. And can you send a draft around before the meeting? Or send it to Elise to include in our package, so just so we have an efficient meeting, everybody.
What I was gonna do was actually send it to Elise and to Stephen. And make sure that I've got two different perspectives, make sure I've recorded everything properly. They
Right.
can tweak it, and then based on those, Elise can send it out to everybody. Elise, does that make sense?
thank you.
Yeah.
That will wait. That's
And I'll try to do that in the next 3 or 4 days.
great.
And that makes me ask the question, when is our next meeting?
Well, let's see. I think it will be April 28th, Wednesday, April 28th. Same time, same place,
next meeting date, yeah.
in 2 weeks.
This meeting was recorded, right? It says recording up there.
That is correct, Carl. So
Question.
you can't change your mind on the vote.
So.
Right, yeah, I know, I'm stuck. But
So the,
what I might change it.
Carl, these meetings are recorded and the recording goes to Jeremy or Chris. And so the recordings are available. So Cynthia often takes advantage of the recordings when writing the minutes. Sometimes the recordings vanish, but in general, they exist and can be accessed.
Are they on the YouTube channel or?
Yes,
Yeah, okay, because at one point I was looking for one of the meetings. And
one of the meetings escaped.
It did, but
that was the one I was looking for.
yep, so they're generally there. Okay,
Okay,
429.
sounds good.
I think we've done it. Is there a
Motion to
motion?
adjourn, motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, does anybody object to this motion? All right then, thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you for your hard work.
Yeah, good work.
See you in 2 weeks.
Have a good night, everybody. Take care.
So long, bye.
Bye-bye.